what I understand now is ketamine is not the fix or the cure. Ketamine is a facilitator. It is a catalyst. It provides you the substrate, the space, the opportunity, this window, if you will, to really have these life-shifting perspective changes.
Three, two, one. Liftoff.
Welcome back to the Ketamine Startup Podcast. This is where we talk about how to start up a ketamine infusion clinic, how to market it, and more. In this episode, Sam sat down with Dr. Randy Frederick, an emergency medicine physician and former military flight surgeon who has taken a unique approach to ketamine therapy for the past several years. Randy and Sam actually went through residency together, but what makes Randy's story so compelling is his evolution from traditional clinical protocols to what he calls a psychospiritual approach to ketamine therapy. He owns Alchemy Wellness in Richmond, Virginia, and has developed a practice that goes far beyond the medical model to focus on consciousness, mind-body-spirit integration, and helping patients navigate their relationship with their own minds. In today's episode, you'll hear Randy explain why he views ketamine as a catalyst rather than a cure, his insights on the challenges and rewards of clinic ownership, and his perspective on the broader and psychedelic landscape. You'll also get to hear about his personal transformation journey and how his own healing work directly influences how he approaches patient care. We enjoyed this conversation and hope you do too. Now let's jump into the episode.
Welcome back to the Ketamine Startup Podcast. I am thrilled to have Dr. Randy Frederick here. He's a really good friend of mine. We actually went to the same residency program for emergency medicine back in the days. He's an excellent clinician and a pioneer in the ketamine space. So it's a pleasure to have you, Randy.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. I'm just overfilled, brimming with excitement to do this. I really appreciate you inviting me, and I'm excited to have this conversation. And yeah, you were the inspiration that started this whole thing. Did I ever tell you that story?
No, I mean, I love to be an inspiration for people, so please tell
Should I
us.
just like rock it into this podcast?
Let's rock it into this podcast. Let's start rolling.
I think I'm kind of like stealing your first question, which is, or at least one of your questions, which is, how did you get into this? But and I actually have two separate answers for that. But the general answer that I gave for many, many years is, I was at a crossroads in my life, and I was working in the ER just like you were. As you mentioned, you and I were in the same residency program. You were a few years ahead of me, and I knew I didn't want to work in the ER in my 60s. I just knew that, and was feeling a little disillusioned and probably a little burnt out. And I was on a flight from one place to another, and while I'm sitting on the plane waiting for everyone else to finish boarding so we can take off, I pull up social media and I'm just kind of flipping through, and there you are. You had just opened up Reset Ketamine in Palm Springs, and I was like, "What? What is this? What?" And that was the first time I'd learned that ketamine that we'd used in the ER for years and years, and you and I had a wonderful training in that. I mean, Loma Linda, like that's where all the ER research for ketamine came out of. But I never knew that it had been repurposed for mood disorders and chronic pain. So that was just like a light bulb that went off, and I was like, "Oh man!" And that was the inspiration, that really the hook that led me down that path. And I spent the next 6 to 12 months just researching, reading everything I could, and finally decided, yeah, this is it. I'm all in, and here I am.
That is awesome, man. I've never heard that part about you just randomly checking out social media and then finding, one of our, wh- you know, I don't know whether it was Instagram or yeah, did you say it was Instagram or Facebook or YouTube?
I think it was Facebook. Yeah, and
Yeah,
so there's a case example of social media actually doing something good for a change.
and it's so true because I couldn't see myself being in my 60s or 70s working in the emergency department. I mean, it was just not sustainable. And, but what's fascinating is being an emergency physician, like you and I were very familiar with administering it to our patients for, procedural sedation and intubation or, whatever we may need it for. But not everyone is, like, called to do this specific area.
Mm.
What was it that got that hook in you that was like, "You know what? This is interesting." What was it about ketamine for you and, taking the leap?
Yeah. So honestly, really what pushed me over the edge where it took it from a somewhat obsessive interest to actual acceptance that this is really the pivot I want to make in my career were the stories. As part of my research after I read countless journal articles and the ketamine papers front to back multiple times, I started reaching out to people in the community. And I actually went to a couple different clinics and hung out with them for a day or and a couple days and just watched them do their thing, talk to them, talk to their patients. And it only takes a few stories of somebody talking about how it saved their lives. Truly. Talking to people who were at that point where everything they tried had failed, the suffering was intolerable, and even perhaps in one case that I remember vividly had set a date and was like, "Okay, if this does," and you hate to hear it when people are like, "This is my last ditch effort," but that was this where this person was in their journey. They really had just tried and failed so many things and were just desperate and hopeless, and they had decided, "Okay, if this doesn't work, I can't keep doing this," and they had decided that at this time, this place, this date, I'm gonna end my life. And thankfully, the ketamine did its magic and completely alleviated the suicidal ideations, allowed them to kind of get their mental house in order, and we're thriving. And just you collect these stories, and you and I have probably hundreds, if not thousands, of stories of our own. And that's really what keeps me jazzed and keeps me going. You've some of your other interviewees have said the same thing, and I'll echo it. You know, I can say with truth and honesty that I know the work I'm doing now is saving more lives than I ever did in the ER. You know, in the emergency room, it's somewhat similar to the shows, but not quite as fully dramatic all the time. You're not always shocking people back to life, and honestly, many of the people that come into the ER that are death or near death, you don't save. And every once in a while, you do, but with ketamine and the work we're doing, it's perhaps not a daily basis, but weekly basis where you're really creating a huge difference in someone's life and just helping them kind of get back on the path, being able to learn how to live and love their life again.
Thank you for sharing that, Randy, and, one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the podcast specifically is because, we were at the last ASKP meeting, I believe it was in Austin a while ago, earlier this year, I believe. And the way you were speaking about how you do ketamine therapy, like I could tell. I remember coming back home that night and I was talking with Kim and I was like, oh, Randy gets it. He gets what we're doing. And of course you do. I mean, you've been doing this for what, 6, 7 years. I know you
Yeah,
opened
six and a
Alchemy
half
Wellness.
years.
So you're like, you understand what we're doing. And I
Mm.
loved how you articulated that. And the part I want to ask you in particular about is you mentioned something, it still stands out to me. This is like, you know, a year later, roughly, and you said, the the medicine part is easy, but it's the challenge is when you're actually sitting with someone and being present for them. So tell us about your approach and how you came to this realization because I think it's quite profound.
I think to frame this, I think it helps to differentiate how my practice has evolved over the years. And when I first started out, it was very clinical minded. Most of the conversations were around the science and the research and what ketamine is doing with the biology and physiology, the receptors, the neurotransmitters, the growth factors. And, that's kind of how I would sort of kind of model our conversations. And over the years, and really this is kind of a sort of parallel thing, is in doing this work, I've also been doing my own work and having my own growth and my own healing. And it really colors my practice. I imbue everything that I've learned in my own journey in how I approach my patients, how I counsel them. So it's shifted from very empirical, data oriented medical science into really this more psychospiritual conversation that I have with people. You know, because what I understand now is ketamine is not the fix or the cure. Ketamine is a facilitator. It is a catalyst. It provides you the substrate, the space, the opportunity, this window, if you will, to really have these life shifting perspective changes, to have these understandings, these insights, to really just be able to get out of your head, get into your body, to rekindle your connection to self, to others, to nature, to community. It really just it quiets the minds, calms the body. It just really kind of puts you in this really malleable state. This is that neuroplastic window, this reward learning circuit that opens up, that really allows you to kind of just take a different view, a different analysis of thoughts and behaviors and habits and patterns, and you puts you in the state of being able to actually access them and change them. It gives people this clarity where they can see their thoughts. There's some distance there. You're not attached to them. You're able to have a little bit of space in there. And when thoughts come in, rather than let them lead you down that well worn path, you actually can have a moment to pause and consider and contemplate and decide maybe, maybe I won't go down that road, or maybe I won't play this role that I always play with my partner. They do this and then I say this and then here we are in this drama that unfolds the same way every time and I know my role and they don't. But now it's like, oh, you're seeing it for the first time. You're like, oh, wow. Holy cow, this is the game we play. Man, I'm gonna do this differently this time. What do you know? Different input, different output. Wow, this is much better. Oh my gosh. Let me do that. Or you realize, the whole perspective shift. Like I I've been holding on to this stuff and I don't have to. I can let it go. I have the choice. So much suffering is derived from the clinging of the mind. The mind clings, it grabs onto outcomes, desires, it grabs onto judgments, you know? Um, I've heard different numbers, 80 to 90% of your thoughts and behaviors are from the subconscious, you know? And ketamine and these other psychedelic molecules, they expand your realm of consciousness. They allow things to come out of subconscious into conscious mind. Now you can work with them. This is where the insight comes and the perspective shifts and the realizations of, I can let go of that resentment that I've been holding on to my whole life that is doing nothing other than harming myself. I can just let go of it. And people will say, I feel lighter because they're not dragging this burden through life with them. They're able to finally let it go, and it frees you up and allows you to be present and here and in your life. So I feel like I've
Yeah,
kind of
I
wandered off
love
the path there.
I love your response, and, you use the word psychospiritual, and people may be listening to this podcast and thinking, "Are they even doctors? What the hell are they talking about? Spiritual?" Like, we're not taught
Yeah.
spirituality, definitely some psychology, but spirituality, and I think that's really cool. I mean, it's very different. It's not what we're traditionally taught in allopathic medicine. So
Mhm.
I think it's very rewarding and enlightening to hear you speak about that, Randy.
Yeah. And perhaps it should be. Perhaps that should be part of our curriculum. People's spirituality is a huge part of their identity. It's a huge part of their belief. It's a huge part of their support system. We should be educated better on the spiritual aspect of the human being, you know? But that's not how our current educational system or really medical system works. It's very
Yeah.
much, empirically oriented, very, scientific materialism. which is great and wonderful, and obviously has its purpose. I if I have cancer, I want an oncologist. You know, um, but I think we get so focused on the biological organism in front of us that it's easy to be focused on that and not see the rest of the person
Mhm.
in front of us who has a mind and has a spirit. And what I love about this work is I get to approach all of that. I don't like the word holistic. I feel like it's almost become kind of a trope, but it really is, kind of in working with people with this medicine, with in this way, it really is helping them kind of reconnect to their belief system, their spirituality, and sometimes a lot of dis-ease is driven from feeling unwhole, incomplete. I'm missing something. I'm broken. You know, and one thing very personal for me in my journey was is I grew up going to church every Sunday. My parents are very Christian Episcopalian. My dad even he became ultimately this was kind of when I was an adult, but ultimately became a deacon, so he wears a collar. But I was altar boy and in youth group and stuff like that. And then I went to college and took a I think it was a New Testament course, like a religious studies course on the New Testament. And our teacher, who I'm pretty sure was actually a pretty faithful Christian, he at least he was a very good academic and presented everything and showed me like how in the New Testament there's a lot of contradictions and inconsistencies, and I learned more about it rather than just accepting it. When you're growing up, your parents basically give you your beliefs, tell you what you believe, and so I started to think more critically about it, and I kind of decided, maybe this, Christian church isn't for me. And so I kind of decided, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to go my own way. And I never circled back to that part of myself. I kind of just was negligent towards my own spirituality, and which was fine because I was going down this path of medicine, which was okay, science and so forth. And so, it really was only a few years ago and in my own journey that I was able to reconnect with that. And I realized what a gaping hole it left inside me that I was trying to fill with other things,
Mhm.
and I was totally unaware of that. But, the experience that I had opened me up to this. I realized that it filled filled that part that was missing and really just shifted who I am as a person and how I'm living my life now. I never went back to church, but there's like a different sort of agnostic kind of spirituality that I have, and I'm sort of building my belief as I go. Pulling from things that inspire me from various religions and faiths and doctrines.
Randy, I'm so glad you mentioned this because it's noticeable. Like, when I knew you back in the days in residency versus, I mean, I'm not saying you're a terrible person or anything, but, I guess there's the but. No, it was noticeable. Like, I was like, "Something has shifted in Randy since when I knew him in residency and when we caught up in person, back at the last conference earlier this year." I was like, "I have no idea what it is, but I, could sense it." And, I do wanna go back because I know we're talking about the spirituality and kind of, someone may say, "Oh, California woo woo," but you were straight up like, trained medically, the biological sciences. I mean, you were even, I believe, in the military, Air Force. Please correct me if I'm wrong. So
Oh, Sam, I was in the Navy.
Ooh,
Come on
Navy.
now.
Oh, my bad. Oh, totally wrong, branch. But I wanna rewind back, and so, okay, so you went to college, and where did you go to college at, by the way?
James Madison University in
Okay,
Harrisonburg,
James.
Virginia.
Alright, so you go to James Madison University, and then, so tell us a little bit about, like, how, I don't know, chronologically you ended up to where you are now, because 'cause I'm just curious about, like, the background. What's the foundation here?
Yeah. So I went to JMU on a small gymnastics scholarship. So I did competitive gymnastics for 15 years of my life, through college. And then after college, I knew I wanted to go to medical school, but I needed a break from academics. So I joined the Peace Corps, and I spent 2.5 years in rural mountains of El Salvador, which was that was a transformative experience. Loved it. It was really hard, but man, what a lot of growth came out of that. So wonderful experience. Then I went to medical school here in Richmond, Virginia. Used to be called College of Virginia for like 150 years. Now it's VCU School of Medicine. Then I did a Navy scholarship through med school. So then I did 5 years in the Navy after that internship, and then 4 years as a flight surgeon and deployed multiple times, including 6 months to Iraq. Then did residency at Loma Linda in Southern California. And then I moved back to Richmond. And this is where I've been for the last 11 years.
Wow. Wow. And I think it's pretty profound that you personally have experience in the military, Navy, serving overseas. And I feel like there's a huge gap for veterans, and I don't know if you've noticed that as far as their mental health care. And I have many patients who are, veterans, former law enforcement. It's interesting how ketamine can be very useful for that patient population. I don't know if that's
Mhm.
been your experience in Virginia, but some of my patients who have served in Iraq and Afghanistan and who've been, exposed to IEDs and other car bombings, like there's a shift that happens with the ketamine therapy. So I don't know, what are your thoughts on, ketamine, psychedelics, and in particular for that veteran population?
Well, similar to you, I've treated many veterans, and the short of it is I am absolutely pro ketamine and psychedelics for veterans. These medicines, these molecules are incredible medicines that must be respected and approached with reverence and intention, and in proper attention given to set and setting, good, with guidance, preparation, all of that, integration afterwards. Um, you know, I 100% think that these can and will eventually become available as tools for us to use and help people suffering from PTSD. Because here's the issue. There's, and I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. There is this mental health crisis, and by that we mean rising rates of suicide, rising rates of anxiety, rising rates of depression. PTSD is has very few, only two FDA medications that are approved for it, and they're not very good, two SSRIs, and it causes a lot of not just distress and harm and disability for the people themselves suffering for it, but there's this societal burden as well. Depression as a disability costs, I forget what I used to know the number at some point, but however many billions of dollars a year from lost productivity, aside from just the medical costs, you know? So it's a huge thing that needs to be addressed. PTSD doesn't have really effective treatments. So we really do need to do everything we can for the veterans, but for everyone. And there's obviously we're in this psychedelic renaissance that are that's being discussed. There's 7 medications right now that are in phase 3 clinical trials, and it's looking like, psilocybin from Compass Pathways might actually gain FDA approval within the next less than 2 years, because it's been fast tracked, and they're basically kind of finishing up their second phase 3 clinical study, and the FDA even recently gave them this accelerated pathway. So they're thinking maybe possibly the earliest would be late next year, but probably 2027 is when most experts that are talking about this think that that'll actually get approved. And then there's all these other things coming through the pipeline. 5-MeO DMT. There's LSD for anxiety as well as depression. There's ibogaine which is incredibly effective for substance use disorders. Ketamine for severe alcohol use disorders, also in phase 3 clinical trials. So there's a lot of stuff happening right now. There's just a lot of movement. There's the data that's come out has just been incredibly impressive. But it is, what's really hard is figuring out how this is all going to work because you have so many different stakeholders, and you have the the people who are, decrim. This is plant medicine. Why are why is this why are we making illegal plants and mushrooms that are growing out of the ground? Like, give me a break. Um, and just want it all to be completely like decriminalized, and people can do what they want and have some liberty to enjoy their lives and pursue happiness and healing with these medicines. You have the big pharma industry that you know probably was seeing it as a threat, but now are warming up. AbbVie Pharmaceuticals just bought, I think it was Gilgamesh for like $1.2 billion, a psychedelic company. So, the big pharma is starting to come around. Otsuka, which is a big Japanese pharmaceutical company, has their own psychedelic
Wow.
molecule going through the process. Who's going to pay for this? The insurance companies. Is this going to be insurance covered? Okay, well, not if it's whatever it was, $15,000 for an MDMA session, treatment. I don't. Maybe, who knows? That we'll see. Then you have the policymakers. Okay, how's the policy going to be formed around this? How are the laws and legal access? And so it's a really interesting place to be. The intersection of these very different stakeholders with their own ideals and missions and visions and just motivations. And so I love doing my day-to-day work with the patients, but I also love just kind of being in this really exciting place where this stuff is like happening. It's popping, you know?
I mean, you're absolutely right. There's so many stakeholders. It's kind of complicated. There's a lot of interests and different incentives and motivations for the various stakeholders. So I think you've painted a really good picture of kind of the landscape and some of the players. And of course, there's more with government, and you already mentioned insurance, and then the privately held companies. So there's just a lot going on, and it's like, well, what can I do in my own personal bubble or circle of influence? And I think focusing on that is really key.
Hey, listeners, this is Kim, and I just want to acknowledge that you're here for a reason. Maybe you're stuck in a cycle of long shifts, feeling a little burnt out, and wondering if there's any other way to practice medicine, especially on your own terms. We've been there, and that's exactly why we created this free checklist, your step by step roadmap to starting a ketamine clinic without those costly mistakes. Grab your copy now at www.ketaminestartup.com/checklist. It's completely free because we want you to succeed, not struggle. And hey, if you're driving or mid workout, don't sweat it. Just check out the show notes for the link when you're ready. And again, that's www.ketaminestartup.com/checklist. Now let's get back to the episode.
Which leads
Mhm.
me to something I noticed that you are personally doing to get maybe more awareness or more education is I think you took Harvard's Zero Law program recently.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you
Yeah.
found that helpful or useful, especially in regards to this, everything going on these days.
Yeah. So what I did was you had to apply for it, and I don't know if they just approved if everyone who applied was approved. It must have been that way. I don't know. But they had what they called a psychedelic summit this summer at Harvard Law School. It was sponsored by the Petrie Flom Center, which is studies. I think their focus is on like medical ethics and biosciences and things like that. And kind of one of their interests is psychedelics and just the legality surrounding it. And so they had this 2 day summit where they invited just, I mean, an incredible group of people. I felt like I was the least esteemed person in the room. But part of that as preparation was they allowed us to take their 0L course, which is a prerequisite course that everyone going into Harvard Law School takes. So before they show up on day one, they're like an L1, just like, when you're a med student, you're an M1. So this was like their 0L. So I guess they're a 1L. I don't know. Point is, this is the course that they take as like an introduction to law. And so it was really interesting doing that coursework, learning about our legal system and not just, how laws are made, but also how they're interpreted in the courts and how the whole court system works and, statutes and how state law and federal law interact. So it was a really cool basis and background of something I'd never learned about before. But then the 2 days just having these people who, I mean, we're in the thick of the research aspect, the policy making aspect, the respect to indigenous peoples and reciprocity there. And this one guy had started his own medicine church in Utah and was being sued by, I think, the state attorney general took him to court, and he actually won the right to
Wow.
serve psilocybin mushrooms in his church. So, it was a really cool experience and informed me deeply because my information all comes from my own sort of sources and newsletters and you know, just it's obviously a personal interest of mine. So am very much kind of on top of stuff. But this was kind of allowed me to go a little bit deeper because these are the ones who are like the stories are about them and they're going through it. And so they were able to kind of color some things and talk about a little bit, more of the background that led to that specific, decision that of that court case or of that policy or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
it was really cool. You know, maybe you should do it next year.
Yeah, maybe I will take it. I mean, I was envisioning it'd be, Randy with his, JD in the next few years because you're it seems like you're up for lifelong
uh,
learning.
no, thank you.
Let's get into the weeds and specifically about ketamine clinics and practices and,
Yeah.
um, so you've had your practice for, approaching 7 years now, and there's some listeners who are curious, like, "Hey, what's it really like? And what are some of the challenges that you've have faced
Mhm.
that were surprising, especially for someone who doesn't have a clinic of their own necessarily?" What would you respond to that
Man.
person?
Well, my response would be that you're wearing many, many hats when you're doing this. And the 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 big hat you're wearing on top of all the other hats is you're a small business owner. And by owning a small business, it is a constant, incessant stream of challenges. They never end. There are little challenges and big challenges, but nothing is ever completely running smoothly all the time. You know? So, to do this, you have to have grit. You have to be committed. You have to have your big reason why, because otherwise, at a certain point, you'll just be like, screw this, you know? And it's again, little things to big things. For me, the biggest challenge has been just the HR stuff. Before this, so I never had any entrepreneurial spirit. I didn't even own a lemonade stand. My life was on this very clear track. Like, I want to be a doctor, go to doctor school, be a doctor, bada boom, bada bing. So this was a very interesting kind of course misdirection of my career to decide to open up a clinic, and in so doing, having to learn how to operate a business, learning how to do things legally, learning how to do accounting, learning how to just handle all those challenges that come. But the HR stuff is really hard. I never hired or fired anyone before I did this. Um, and at this point I've had, multiple turnovers of staff for various reasons. Some people have their own lives and their own opportunities, and sometimes they have opportunities that take them elsewhere, and that's fine and that's great, and I wish them well. But sometimes there's interpersonal stuff between staff members. Sometimes there's staff that it's time for them to go. They just don't. It's not a good fit anymore. So the HR stuff has really been, to me, the most challenging. But all of these challenges are all opportunities for growth. All of these challenges are opportunity for you to just kind of examine what are your thoughts and immediate reactions to that. And if you're doing your own work, you realize, okay, let me take a breath. Let me consider this. Let me respond rather than react. Let me perhaps tap into my community and get other viewpoints, which I've done that many times. Having mentors is essential, absolutely essential. Otherwise, you're going to make 10 times as many mistakes, you know? So it's challenging on all ends, but at the end of the day, you know, y- the pros and cons to everything, and the pros are it is your clinic. It's your domain to make your decisions. You don't have to answer to somebody else or ask, somebody else for simple things. Your whole chair thing took you and it cost you an arm and a leg and part of your soul just to get a dang chair in the ER. It's like if you want a
Good
chair, you get a
memory.
chair. Yeah. So that's kind of nice. And I'm able to now have the lifestyle that I love. I love that I come home every night and I have dinner with my family. I love that I have every weekend with my son and my wife. I never miss a soccer game. I never miss a holiday. I love that. To me, that is absolutely precious and worth every bit of it. You know, I I make less than half of what I could go make in the ER, and I'm totally okay with that. I'm totally okay with that because I get to live this life where I get to be present with my family as much as possible, and I'm not missing all that stuff. And so for me, it's totally worth it.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you bring up such a good point. I mean, several things I've been taking notes, and I mean, the work, the hat that you referenced of being a small business owner, it's so true. Like, I mean, it's constant in a way, and it can overtake our mind and our time and energy because you're not only a physician or a clinician running a seeing patients, but we're actually like the owner of the business. So there's a lot there, and I really love how you mentioned grit because they're like guaranteed anyone who opens up a practice, they will face challenges. Like it's just the nature of starting something and running something. Like you have to have a grit, you have to have a strong why. So I really appreciated how you emphasize that. And then also you mentioned having time and for yourself to be with your family, to be with your son, to be there for those holidays. And it reminds me of this book that Kim and I read recently. It's called The Five Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom. And we'll put that in the notes. But they talk about the five types. The first one is financial wealth. The second one is time wealth. The third is social wealth. The fourth is psychological wealth. And lastly, number five is physical wealth. And so, like you just said, like, yeah, financially, I may be making less now, but now I have these other domains of wealth that make it worth it. And I think that's really important for an aspiring clinician to know, like, yeah, there may be certain areas where it goes down, maybe the financial aspect, but the other realms of wealth may far outweigh it. So that's just, yeah, really, really important for us to share.
I I tell my patients, it's is this from Rocky? It's like it's not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up. You know, this is life. Life is a series of challenges. There are obstacles, and it's supposed to be that way. And you can view them as impediments and you are a victim to them and it happened to me, or you can view them as this is an opportunity for me to grow, to change, to prove to myself I can do this, and it's just a mindset thing. And the thing is, when you go down this path, you realize it is all a choice. You can choose to view it as one way or the other. You are not beholden to where your mind initially decides it's what it's going to be. You can accept that, or you can challenge it and say, you know what? No, I can actually look at this a different way. And in so doing, create a completely different outcome.
I mean, it's so true, Randy, because I mean, I'll share a personal part of thing that's been going on with us recently is we had a bombing affected it
Mhm.
literally we were 50 yards away from a terrorist suicide bombing and there's contamination, and the building office, it's damaged. And I mean, that's probably the biggest challenge that I've had ever in my life. And being a business owner and a medical doctor, it's like, wow, this is huge. And I'll be honest with you, there was a part where I was just like, man, this is so hard. Like, I don't know if I have the grit for this. And then I shifted my perspective. Like, there was literally a moment where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to give it up. I'm just going to go back to being an ER doctor. Like, it's financially more rewarding. There's a huge demand. I'm just going to keep it simple. And I think having the grit and the why is what sustained me and rejuvenated me. I was like, you know what? I have to live my purpose. This is the challenge. And I can either view it as like, hey, I'm a victim to the circumstances of what occurred, or I can see it as an opportunity to grow. And I had this vision where, our logo for the clinic, it's a pair of wings with a reset button in the middle. And I had this crazy vision where I just saw these wings just getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And the insight that I had was, don't ask for less turbulence, ask for bigger wings. And when I had that insight of like, oh, this is just another challenge. It's about, like you said, how do I view this? Like, is it going to, push me over the edge, or am I going to grow from it and get even stronger? So I think you're absolutely right. It's a choice that we make. It's a perspective shift. But a lot of times when we're in it, we don't realize that.
Yeah. And that, first of all, I'm just so grateful that you and Kim and your staff are all safe and healthy and nothing happened to you guys. Um, yeah, and I can't think of a bigger challenge than literally having your clinic blow up. So you win biggest challenge of the day for sure. But it's the work that I am doing in my clinic is to help people get to that point. I help them sort of re-understand their relationship to their own mind. We talk about this Jungian concept of individuation, the true self versus the egoic mind. And your ego is who you think you are. It is the labeling of yourself. It is the categorization of yourself. I am this, I am that. And it really, we don't question it, we just identify with it. But you are not your mind or your thoughts. Thoughts come and go. Thoughts change. The mind is just making thoughts. That's what it's supposed to do. And sometimes they're really weird. And those are, again, based mostly in subconscious. And as what's amazing about these medicines is you have this sort of mystical experience where you're able to kind of separate from mind. That's the whole ego dissolution, ego death kind of experience. And you realize, oh my gosh, there's a part of me that is completely just not the mental part. And when you identify with that and you're able to sort of separate from the mind a little bit, then you start to get a little bit more kind of lay of the land. And the whole thing is to basically subjugate the mind. The mind is a terrible leader and a wonderful servant. And yet we let our minds drive us through our lives. And so the work we're doing, especially, ketamine inducing that dissociative state, and then having that sort of little period afterwards where they're able to kind of have that mental spaciousness, that, able to kind of be an observer of the thoughts, have a little separation. They start to understand, okay, I'm not obligated to just grab onto every thought that comes into my head. And not every thought that comes into my head is true. And I can challenge it. Or I can, if the mind is starting to kind of wander off, as soon as I'm aware of it, I can tell, oh, no, my mind, come back. We're not going down there. It really is kind of gaining control again. You become the leader of your mind. And you tell your mind, okay, what thoughts are we gonna hold on to and what thoughts are we gonna let go of? But it's also that building of awareness and attention. And I try to get all my patients, I talk to them all about, having a mindfulness practice. And, it can be any number of things. For me, it's meditation. I've developed my own meditation practice. I meditate every single day. And it absolutely is just an essential part of, who I am now, and it helps me center and ground and make sure I'm doing everything with intention or as much as I can. But, you still get in your head, and it's funny because 'cause you'll just be up in there, and then you have that moment of like, "Ah, okay. Woof, man, that mind really took me for a journey there. Alright, calm down, relax, bring it back, ground," and that's the work. That's the work, is just kind of reconfiguring your relationship with your mind, and then curating it and making it yours, and not letting it drive your behaviors and your thoughts, because again, that's all coming from your conditioning. Your mind is a product of your life experiences, and most of your life experiences have nothing to do with you directly. Your parents treated you this way, your friends in school treated you that way. Heaven for Oh my god, like advertising, marketing, social media now, telling you all the stuff that you're a value if you're this, or this, and you're not if you're not. And all of this gets jammed into your mind, and it gets pushed into the subconscious, and it's driving your thoughts and behaviors and thoughts about self, which are often dysfunctional or just downright wrong or terrible, and you're accepting it because you're letting your mind drive the bus. But doing this work and these medicines just give you this experience, this opportunity to really kind of just separate yourself from it. And then once you do that, you can start working on the mind and getting it back in order. And then you become in alignment, mind, body, spirit. And that is when we feel whole. And that is when the dis-ease disintegrates. And that is when we find peace and calm from within. And that's what it's all about, brother.
Wow, spoken like a true Zen master here, Randy. Yeah, that's amazing. And as you were speaking, it made me think about the mind as like an unfiltered email inbox where we're getting all these ads for, I don't know, for the latest, product to buy. And our thoughts are just junk mail. We're like, I don't need that thought. I don't need to double click that junk mail. Let me just archive it or put it into junk mail, and focusing and choosing which thoughts we want to focus on, or even getting ourselves outside of the inbox and just letting it be and being present. So yeah, our
Shut the computer down for a little bit.
shut the computer down. Shut down the default mode network. Take a break,
Eh,
right? We don't need to
yep.
be getting all these unsolicited emails and spam messages and junk messages. It's like, yeah, we need to shut it down temporarily and get that pause for mind, body, spirit alignment. It's absolutely true. And, I feel blessed that we have access to these technologies and these medicines because I think we're living in a really amazing time with the research that's happening, the clinics that are available like yours. And, I think there's at least 1,000 clinics nationwide. So people do have access. Of course, please everyone do your own research and judgment. But even having access, I think that's really beneficial for our society at large.
Yeah. Yeah. Ram Dass says that the best thing that I can do for you is to work on myself. And the best thing you can do for me is to work on myself. And if we're all working on ourselves, we're all helping each other, lifting each other up. That's it's kind of our imperative at this point, I think. The world seems to be on fire, literally sometimes and metaphorically. I don't know. I don't know if we're at some existential crisis or not, but the sooner we can get there, the better.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know you were a fan of Ram Dass.
Oh,
Or
I consider him, even though I've never met the man because he unfortunately passed away 5 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years, a while ago.
2019, I think, right before the pandemic.
I consider him one of my great teachers. I've listened to hours of his lectures, read his books. I just have this deep connection to him. It felt like his message is just so beautiful and just resonates
I have to
with
show
me.
you this. I don't know if you can see this.
It's a little out of the box
Okay,
there.
right here.
Ah, nice.
So
Absolutely love it.
yeah, I'm showing Randy, for those listening, a tattoo that I have,
Yeah, it's
and
the
on the
butterfly in his lower
tattoo,
back. It's beautiful.
exactly. Yeah, let's take a look at my lower back. It's beautiful. Um, yeah, I have a tattoo, and it says "Be here now," and it's from Ram Dass's like OG books back in the days, I think in the 70s. And it's a reminder for me personally to be in the present moment. And yeah, because that's really all that exists is this presence. And yeah, I actually just finished reading his book. What is it called? Being Ram Dass. And yeah, it was interesting. I got to see the whole journey from his, it's an autobiography of him. I think there's definitely a connection between meditation, mindfulness, ketamine, these entheogenic substances and medicines. Yeah, there's some sort of connection for sure within this that I think if a clinician is able to bring in those unique elements, it's like art when I think about opening
Yeah.
up a practice, right? Like every experience you've had, Randy, now plays a role into your practice and the way you work with patients. And each clinic is going to have their own unique style because every clinician is different. But I think what you've curated and what you're offering and doing at Alchemy Wellness, it's really a masterpiece of your life experiences and your continued growth.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I tell all my patients, look, I'm walking the walk with you. I'm not just telling you what you need to do. I'm just sharing my own knowledge and experience and what I've learned. And I hope that helps. And it generally does. So, but I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And on that piece about, offering advice for your patients, what is one piece of advice that you would offer to anyone looking to open up their own practice in this space?
I would echo, if you haven't already listened to the preceding 43 podcasts that Sam's put out there, they're amazing. But, everyone's hit the big things, have your why, definitely have do this with intention and integrity because I'm telling you right now, you're not going to get rich doing it, but you might be a different kind of rich in time, rich in really connecting with patients and seeing them blossom. I mean, that's like the best part of this job is just seeing people come in and the transformation within a few weeks. I mean, in 2 weeks, it's a 3 week obviously series, but you know, it's 2.5 weeks later. Oftentimes, they are completely different. You have altered their life trajectory for the rest of their lives, and it is just beautiful to be witness to that and to be a part of that. It's humbling. Um, but so definitely have your reason why. You're going to need to build your team. You'll need lawyers. You'll need accountants, et cetera, et cetera. So having your why, having a mentor and team is important. I think those are the two big ones. I mean, obviously, there's probably many more, but you only asked for one. So
Thank you for sharing that. And now we're going to switch gears and ask you some rapid fire fun questions. And the first one for you, Randy, is let's say that you're going to be stranded on a deserted island for
mm,
whatever reason, you're going to be. And you could only have one book, one movie, and one type of food with you. What would those be?
Sam, in preparing for this, I probably spent more time ruminating on these stinking questions than I did on anything else. It's like I don't know. So if I just like had to pick one, I think for I mean, for a book, you could go practical or you could just go, entertainment wise. Like, do you want like a survival guide or, I think if I had to pick one book, it'd probably be either Hemingway, For Whom the Bell Tolls, or maybe something by Dostoevsky. I just really love those books. Movie, honestly, this is I'm on an island and I'm just by myself, and so I need to be entertained. I need something that's uplifting and happy and funny. So I'm going with Dumb and Dumber, just classic. And then what was the last thing? The food?
Yeah, the type of food.
Yeah, I'm gonna need something that I never get sick of, and this is gonna be like the worst answer ever, but I'm gonna go with hummus with the fixings because I
Okay.
just never get sick of hummus. I could eat it every day.
All right. Good personal fun facts that we know now about Randy. You mentioned meditation already as kind of a good way to ground you, but let's say you've had a really tough day at the clinic and it might be the patients or it might be HR or it might be other challenges. Like, what's your go-to way to relax and de-stress after a challenging day?
Just coming home and just hanging with my peeps here, like, that's all I need. I come home and I leave all that stuff outside. I'll pick it up tomorrow morning when I walk out the door,
Yeah.
and I come home and I'm just home, and I'm here with my wife and son, and we have this ritual. I don't even know how it started, but every night we have tea after we've finished dinner, and maybe we'll have some dessert, and every night we just sit around in the living room and just have, like, a cup of tea, and it's just, our little I don't know, our little ritual, and we just love it.
That's heartwarming. That's awesome. Is it I'm assuming it's decaffeinated, like
Yes, yes,
chamomile or something? Okay.
yeah, it's herbal tea.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you for
We
expressing concern.
yeah. We have a nightly ritual at our house, and we don't do the tea, but we ask ourselves the question, like, what's your highlight from today? What was your highlight?
Mm,
And even our daughter, she's 5, and she'll think about and reflect on her day, and we'll share our highlights for the day. And it's just, yeah, I think coming home and having rituals, it's really powerful, and it's just a good way to, I don't know, create boundaries. Because, like you said, being a small business owner can be encompassing and overwhelming. But I think having that boundary, it's a psychological boundary, I guess, but it's really important.
mm.
Randy, do you have a hidden talent or hobby that most people would be surprised to learn about you?
I mean, other than the gymnastics thing, I for a very long time, I was very much into food and chefery and Epicureanism, and I have a million cookbooks and all the my wife goes nuts because I have so many, like, knives and appliances and stuff like that. So I for a very, very long time, I was all about food, like learning about food, preparing food, going to really nice restaurants. Um, so yeah, so I can cook a meal.
Okay. Well, if we're ever out in the Virginia area, we're gonna hit you up and have
Sam, you are
a
welcome and
Randy
invited
sponsored meal.
anytime.
Time traveling question, because
Yeah.
and partially related because I watched recently with my daughter the entire Back to the Future series, part 1, 2,
Mhm,
and 3. So this is really appropriate. So let's say that you could go. Well, you know what? I'm going to mix it up for you. Let's say that you did have a DeLorean, and you could
mhm.
travel in time. Where and when would you go?
This is funny. I have no answer to this question. I really don't. Uh, so I asked ChatGPT, and I'm just gonna go with their answer or its answer, which was, Alexandria, Egypt, back in, like, 3000 BCE, because it was just, like, the the center of the world of just of they had this grand library, and scholars from all over the world, from, India, Islamic countries, the, Middle East, all kind of came to Alexandria to learn from each other, and, medicine and knowledge of the human body was just getting started, and, like, you know, so that sounds kind of cool. So yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. I think, and this is me projecting, but I think the best answer for you for this question is the now.
And maybe that's why I didn't have an answer.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
I'm happy with this moment.
Yes. Yes, I can definitely, yeah. I mean, yes, you resonate that for sure, or radiate that, I mean. Last question, and you don't know about this one, so it'll be a
Mm,
surprise for you.
great.
So, if you could not be a doctor, what would you do instead?
Well, again, my old answer probably would have been a celebrity chef, but honestly, I think it I would think I would like to be like a river guide or something like that. Like,
Hmm.
how great is that job? You get to just bring people and show them an amazing time going down whitewater rapids and stuff like that every day, like, that sounds like a pretty good gig to me.
Wonderful. And one last question for you is where can people learn more about you, your clinic? What's the best way to connect with you, whether that's, your website or socials? What would be the best source of connection? And we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Okay. Probably my website. It's www.wellwithalchemy.com.
Okay, excellent. That will be in the show notes. And I want to finish by just saying thank you for being here. Thank you for the work you're doing. I know, and I'm very confident that you are doing it with the utmost integrity, with the appropriate ideal set and setting, and just bringing all parts of Randy that make such a profound transformation for your patients. Because I think that you really get it of what this work is about, and it's obvious based upon our conversation and my interactions with you. And I'm just really honored that you do the work you do, and that you also came to be interviewed on our podcast.
Awesome. Sam, thank you so much. I'm honored. I'm inspired. Thank you for having this platform. Thank you for doing the work that you're doing. And I hope you guys are able to get back in that clinic soon. Are you back yet or
We are not back yet, but things are definitely shifting,
okay.
and I'm looking forward to early 2026. So it's definitely longer than I had anticipated. But I really can't anticipate the timeline of recovering from a terrorist bombing. So it's going to be happening definitively. The timeline is TBD.
Awesome. Well, I look forward to you resuming your place in all of this. So thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ketamine Startup Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps other entrepreneurial medical professionals like you discover the show and grow our community. You can find all the show notes, resources, and links at ketaminestartup.com/podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.